designs given priority attention by the Nigerian Army as Natural and Applied Science Complex is inaugurated.
And good morning, Nigeria. This Thursday, our focus is on the U.S. and Iran face-off. Well, on Friday last week, the world received shocking news that Iran's top general, Qasem Soleimani, had been killed in a United States strike in Baghdad, the Iraqi capital. And
days later, Iran retaliates through an attack on a U.S. military base in Baghdad, Iraq.
But thereafter, U.S. President Donald Trump, in a television broadcast, gave reasons for the attack on Soleimani, explaining that no U.S. citizen died in the Iranian attack. We later hear the supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Khomeini, saying the attack on the U.S. is not just enough.
You know, Kieran, he actually said that it's a slap on the face. It's just like a slap on the face. And Wednesday comments by U.S. President Donald Trump indicate an openness to diplomacy, but with the insistence that the United States is ready for military action though it currently does not want to tell that part.
Well, Trump also revealed intentions to impose economic sanctions on Iran, as well as stop them from pursuing a nuclear ambition. The broadcast by U.S. President further suggests that the U.S. can get over the attack on its military base. But what actually also shocked the world was what happened just yesterday, you know, when described as two smaller rockets were launched at the green zone, and that green zone was carved out in 2003 when
it's highly fortified.
Yeah, when Iraq was invaded, and it is also a place where we have a U.S. embassy and the embassies of other foreign nationals.
Yes, the attack I think happened around 9:30 to 10:30 p.m. Nigerian time yesterday, and these actions by both countries have increased the tensions in the Gulf and across territories of common allies, as well as escalated the price of oil.
The U.S. president says he will advise NATO to shoulder more responsibilities in the Middle East. He also urged parties in the Iranian nuclear deal to have a reality check and abandon the deal.
So what are the reactions in Iran to the comments by President Donald Trump in his press conference yesterday? How will this developing story play out? And what should be the reaction of both countries, allies to this state or affairs? This is our focus on Good Morning Nigeria today. Welcome to the program. I am Jumma Yusuf.
And I am Kieran. Thank you for joining us this morning. We appreciate that. And this morning we are going to be bringing you, as usual, complimentary segments of the program. And we broadcast live on the network service of the NTA. For now, let's bring in our newscaster for the morning news, and that's Chimobi Watanaji.
Hello, good morning to you, Kieran and Jume. It's good to see you this morning. Good morning, Nigeria, and here is the morning news. The Supreme Court has upheld the victories of the governors of Abuja, Taraba, Niger, and Delta states at the 2019 governorship election. The seven-man panel of justices led by Justice Bode Rhodes Viva gave the unanimous judgment this Wednesday. Now, the Air Task Force of Operation Lafia Dole says it has destroyed some facilities at an Islamic State of West African province ISWAP hideout at Kusuma on the fringes of the Lake Chad. In a statement by NAF Director Public Relations and Information, Air Commodore Ibikule Daramola says the air strikes is in continuation of the sustained offensive against terrorist targets in the northeast of the country under the auspices of Operation Rattlesnake 2. The airstrikes was conducted after credible intelligence reports indicated a cluster of compounds within the settlement was being used to house some ISWAP leaders along their supplies. The ATF then detailed attack aircraft to engage the location, leading to the destruction of the designated structures, some of which were seen engulfed in flames. The NAF says it will sustain its air campaign in synergy with surface forces to shape the battle space in the northeast for the effective conduct of further ground and air operations. Now, as part of ongoing drive to develop a formidable fighting formation through the Nigerian Army University BU in Borno State, the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Tukar Buratai, has inaugurated the Natural and Applied Science Complex for the institution.
This is in tune with my vision of having a professionally responsive Nigerian Army in the discharge of its constitutional roles. Let me also use this opportunity to thank the President, Muhammadu Buhari, for graciously granting approval for the establishment of this university.
In civil security, the Rivers State Police Command has confirmed the arrest of 2 persons in connection with the murder of Matilda Ebitoye Mag, a final-year law student of the Rivers State University. Among those arrested is the victim's ex-boyfriend.
First of all, she informed me that he borrowed some money from her, about 40,000 naira, to buy something or so. He was broke at that moment and he was going to pay her a little bit after. I think that was around August. And after some time, I heard from her that she borrowed him then another money, about 30. So in total, it became 70. On Saturday, she told me that he had promised to pay her the money on the 20th.
For that unfortunate incident, 2 persons have been arrested and they are helping us in our investigation. It's quite a sad situation. One of the suspects arrested is the ex-boyfriend of the girl.
And now to health matters. For the first time in Nigeria, conjoined twins who were joined in the chest and abdomen are successfully separated at the National Hospital, Abuja, have been presented before the public. Revealing that the procedure lasted for 12.5 hours, the health professionals promised to continue to do more to reduce medical tourism in the country.
Actually, the size of 2 livers joined together. In terms of separating it, we had very advanced equipment that helped us to separate it very quickly without losing much blood.
To encourage other hospitals to actually show more commitment to be able to bring their teams to work together.
And the hospital, the National Hospital Management, may the Almighty God continue to increase them.
It will no longer be business as usual for illegal oil bunkers in the Niger Delta in 2020 and beyond, as Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, has resolved to come down hard on them. Acting chairman of the EFCC, Ibrahim Magu, gave the warning while speaking with journalists in Port Harcourt.
Trying to see how we can work together to contain the situation, to arrest the situation, and also contribute to the arrest of the situation.
In a related development, indiscriminate uses of sirens and convoys without authorization will now have the Federal Road Safety Court to contend with in year 2020 and beyond. Now, this was one of the policy pronouncements made by the Corps Marshal Baboyo Oyeyemi at a media chat where he revealed and rolled out plans for the Corps for the year 2020.
Most of these convoys we are seeing, they are not even government officials. I think it's an abuse of freedom of movement and co. And there must be a stop to this. Most of them are not entitled to siren, to put a flash on their vehicles. And I think it's part of the lawlessness we are talking about. I will work with the Inspector General of Police and ensure that we put a stop to this.
And that concludes the news highlights for now. Jume and Kiran will be back for the continuation.
Welcome back to Good Morning Nigeria. Global growth to inch up by 2.5% in 2020 despite rising debt and slow productivity growth. Kunle Ade has details.
The World Bank in its January 2020 Global Economic Prospectus states that the global economic growth is expected to rise by 2.5% as trade and investments are gradually recovering from significant weakness that characterized 2019, but downward risks persist. Regional growth in Sub-Saharan Africa is anticipated to be in the region of 2.9% in the year being projected, assuming investors' confidence improves in large economies and if energy challenges and others are addressed. The bank observed that Nigeria's growth is expected to move close to 2.1%. 0.9 is anticipated for South Africa, 1.5 in Angola, and 6% for Kenya. In another development, OPEC Secretary General Mohammed Barikindo said that Iraqi oil facilities are secured and the country's production is continuing. Barikindo in Abu Dhabi in United Arab Emirates said it's a big relief that the facilities continue to be secured in Iraq. In a message to US President Donald Trump, Barikindo said OPEC alone could not shoulder the responsibility of maintaining a stable oil market. He added that he was confident leaders are doing everything possible to restore normalcy and that nobody wants a war. And the equities market closed on Wednesday on a positive note as Nigeria's Stock Exchange All-Share Index appreciated by plus 3.54% to close at 28,568.48 points as against plus 0.90% appreciation recorded previously. With business news, I'm Kunle Adeyeye.
Thank you, Kunle, for that package. Up ahead on Good Morning Nigeria is newspaper review.
Newspaper reviewer Bayo TV is already seated in the studio with us. Good morning.
Thank you, Juma. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Bayo.
Good morning,
It's good to see you again.
Thank you. Good morning, Nigeria.
Kiran decided to honor us with his presence after disappearing and going away.
Yes. I saw him yesterday. I welcome him to 2020.
Yeah, 2020. I've not seen him since last year.
Thank you.
Can you imagine?
Thank you. And I wish you a happy new year as well.
Happy New Year, Kiran. So we begin today with the Daily Trust newspaper, just below the masthead. Inspector General of Police OK Southwest Security Outfit Amote Kunda's story is on page 3. Trump, U.S. imposing new powerful sanctions on Iran after strikes. You find that story on page 39. 2023, Tinubu camp jolted by Bode George's presidency bid. You find that story on page 22. And our bold headlines there. Fate of 7 governors uncertain as Supreme Court clears Ipeazu, Okowa, Ishaku, and Bello. You can see the pictures of those cleared. And so far, the APC controls 20 seats, PDP 15, and Abga 1. At the bottom plate of the Daily Trust newspaper, 2 people killed, custom officers abducted in Katsina. Find that story on page 4. NNPC imported 18 billion liters of PMS in 2019. That's coming from the PPRA. The story is on page 13. Key agri projects federal government wants to spend 30 billion naira on. That story is on page 28.
All right, let's turn to the leadership newspaper. For this morning, we have a number of headlines here from top to bottom. Nigerians spent 2.7 trillion naira on 18 billion liters of petrol in 12 months. The story can be found on page 5 of the leadership newspaper. And just after that, Ukrainian plane crashes in Iran, claims 176 lives. It's on page 38. Now, the lead headline this morning, federal government to remove 200,000 N-Power beneficiaries from scheme. Find out why on page 4. It has a rider to that, no allocation for batch A in 2020 budget. There are other stories. Now, 293 dead, 1,267 injured on Bauchi Mediguri Road. That's statistics of auto crashes by FRSC. And at the bottom of the leadership newspaper, However, trending stories. The Supreme Court affirms Governor Sani Bello Ishaku Ibazo Okowa's elections. It's on page 2. Now, World Bank forecasts 2.1% growth for Nigerian economy. That's a good story there. It's on page 29. Nigerian Air Force bombs another terrorist hideout in Borno. It's on page 11. And EFCC combs Sheikh Hussaini's Abuja residence. Find out reasons for that on page 12. IGP to sanction officers for rights violation. It's on page 14. Let's bring in Bayo now.
Well, let's start with the Supreme Court that gave ruling for 4 governors of the Federation following from the March elections. The governors are governors of Delta, Niger, Taraba, and Abia. Delta, the Apex Court held that the case lacked merit. For Abia, the Supreme Court held that the lower court and the appeal court were right in upholding the election of Governor Ekpazu. For the case of Niger, it was said that it was merely a waste of the court's time, and the case of Umaru Nasco lacked merit. For the case of Taraba State, they said the All Progressive Congress that did not have a candidate had no business, had no local standing, coming to court to challenge the victory of Taraba State government. Meanwhile, the Delhi Trust still says that there are 7 governors whose fate from the last March election are still to be determined before the Apex Court, and they are Adamawa, Benue, Bauchi, Imo, Plateau, Sokoto, and Kano states. Meanwhile, the World Bank has forecasted that Nigeria's growth for 2020 is to be about 2.1%, and that is very encouraging. And the World Bank also says that 3 leading economies of the continent, that is Nigeria, South Africa, and Angola, had their economies slowed down. On the forecast, the World Bank also said that for the developed world, particularly those in the Europe, their economy was also had a challenge, and the growth rate was about 1.4%. This is good news for Nigeria because it is not too far from the projection in the 2020 budget. And this is perhaps the second time that the projection of the IMF and the World Bank have come to confirm the projection for the Nigerian economy. It was the same thing in 2019. In fact, the projection for the Nigerian economy was spot on than what the IMF and the World Bank had.
Yes, in fact, it's a good news for Nigeria, and for the nation to sustain that tempo. It has to do more in the area of manufacturing, in the area of science, technology, and innovation, doing things by ourselves, for ourselves.
Yes, I think that's a good move in Nigeria. That is something we need in this country, actually.
South Africa's economy is projected to about 1.5, and that of Angola, I think, is even lower than that.
So we're moving steadily, and the economy is just improving.
Sub-Saharan Africa, 2.9%.
2.9%.
Okay, that's this story on the removal of 200,000 NPower beneficiaries from the scheme. The story on page 4 of a leadership newspaper, and I was just reading through to get the reason for their removal. As a matter of fact, these are part of the 500 young Nigerians recruited by the federal government for the NPower program in 2016. And it says that it was gathered that they were being dropped from the scheme because there was no budgetary provision for them in the 2020 budget. Then the Youth Empowerment Program was created by the federal government with a focus on large-scale skill development for employment and social development.
Well, this is a consequence of the budget. The executive sometimes proposes a budget. The National Assembly, in passing the budget, sometimes will take some items from various subheads and relocate them elsewhere. So when you make a proposal for a program like the NPower and there's no approval for it in the budget, then you have no choice than to drop, because it means that there's no resources provided for it in the budget. If government goes ahead, it will be countermand to environment against an appropriation, a law that has been passed by the National Assembly.
But many Nigerians will argue that this is an intervention mechanism by this government to, in fact, improve on unemployment in this country. And so it's a priority task, if you ask me, that the National Assembly, should be more sensitive to things like that, because these are talking about human beings. These are talking about engaging more Nigerian youth, especially those who have graduated from various universities across the country. And keeping them busy is one of the best achievements any nation can, in the circumstance we find ourselves. So for me and many other Nigerians, sustaining that tempo and ensuring that these 200 people are captured in the budget will go well for the nation.
I agree with you,
because saying we're taking 100 million people out of poverty. How can that be possible if schemes like this are stopped?
Well,
it's a soft landing.
Well, this one is not actually part of the program. The program of keeping 100 million people out of employment is to enhance the infrastructural development, which with its and agriculture would enhance employment, engage idle hands. But like you said, an idle hand is the devil's workshop, and therefore we have to do something. But I think it is not too late in the day, in the sense that the executive can still provide what is called supplementary by way of budget and send it to the National Assembly if it feels strongly that this aspect of it needs to be taken up again.
Okay, well, in the passing month, that's of course last year, we actually talked so much about auto crashes across the nation, because of the increase of vehicular movements during the Yuletide period. And now we have this, that 293 dead, 1,267 injured on Bauchi-Mudigu Road alone.
It's worrying, the speed of accidents on our highway, and the factors are not far-fetched. Some of them are a factor of bad roads. Most of them are a factor of drivers themselves, overspeeding or under influence of alcohol. There are other instances whereby it is a matter of the vehicle they are using being in a very poor shape, and that leads to some of these accidents. But be that as it may, there has to be emphasis about respect and knowledge about the highway rules. There are many who go onto the highway who do not know the rules, and they become a danger to even the passengers they convey. And that is why the Federal Road Safety Corps must continue to have the activities highly improved upon.
Okay, now can we talk about the IG's sanctions? He says the IG to sanction officers for rights violation. And just before this, about a couple of days ago, we had this incident in Enugu, where a young man was molested by 3 police officers, who tried to force him to unlock his iPhone for whatever reason that was. But what went viral, on social media was the battering of this young man. And of course, the IG has also reacted to that. And we've now seen this story this morning. He says he's going to sanction officers for rights violation.
Yes, the police has been recently very proactive about rights violation. You recall there was also a story of a lady whose daughter fell upon entering in the car, and she reacted by pulling out the house help who supposedly was responsible for her daughter falling and maltreated her. It happened, and immediately the police followed up and arrested her right in her residence. Several other such instances, and I think it is a positive development in the sense that you cannot commit any crime and go free, provided that members of the public put it on the social media. The police will go after you. So if you don't want to serve the term, don't commit the crime.
I'm just in a story here inside the Daily Trust newspaper, that's on page 4. Mob hijack suspect from police set him ablaze in Benue State.
Oh, that's another side.
That's on page 4 of the Daily Trust newspaper. He was arrested by the police, and the residents were quite displeased, so they formed a blockage in the 2 exit areas where they were taking him to the police station. They brought him out, lynched him, and set him ablaze.
Well, one has to be very careful when it comes to mob violence.
Yes.
Of recent, if you recall, there was supposedly some one-chance people that were set ablaze at Dusi.
Yes.
Some information are indicating that apparently they may not have been one chance persons. The driver was said to be somebody who was muted. He doesn't hear. The passenger in the car was saying, stop, stop, I want to stop here. And the girl raised alarm. And before you knew it, there was mob action. Some of those passengers in the car that were killed were students. They had nothing to do with one chance. So mob action is very vile.
It's very dangerous.
It is wrong and it's also dangerous. Most often than not, an innocent victim becomes the target. However, the proactiveness of the police also must increase. On the road between Mubi to Yola, there were demonstrations by people in that area because they said that kidnappers that they themselves had arrested and handed over to the police had been released. And therefore, it has become a matter that was becoming worrisome for that community.
And so, on the story Jumai read, there are communities that know who is who.
Yes.
Right. And if you have a track record of some nefarious activities, you are pointed, people point at you. And when there's any opportunity to deal with you, they don't go back doing that. Just like you said, it's wrong to do that. That's true. But there are areas where everybody is sensitive to security, and we know what you do. So if tomorrow something happens, I would say, we'll tell you, man, you're a thief, and we know you, and that's it. Okay. It's here that we wrap it up on this segment of the program. That's a newspaper review. We'd like to appreciate Bayo Atoyebi for being here for us as always. Bayo, thank you.
Thank you
for coming. All right, Good Morning Nigeria continues after this break.
Thanks for joining us. And to set the pace for our discussion, let's listen to this background about Abdusalam Jibrin.
Soleimani was plotting imminent and sinister attacks on American diplomats and military personnel, but we caught him in the act and terminated him.
That was the U.S. President Donald Trump giving reasons why his administration targeted and killed Iran's top general Qasem Soleimani, which has ignited tensions to alarming levels between both countries. In an apparent reprisal, Iran attacked a U.S. military base in Iraq, further increasing tensions in the Gulf. The U.S. and Iran have long been foes, and the current hostilities between both countries can perhaps be traced back to 2018, when Donald Trump abandoned the 2015 nuclear deal and reinstated U.S. sanctions to force Iran's leaders to agree to a new deal. This the Iranians rejected, even as the country's economy was sent into a deep recession. Relations between both countries further deteriorated in June last year when 6 oil tankers were sabotaged in the Gulf of Oman. The U.S. accused Iran of being behind the attacks. The following month, Iran began suspending some of the commitments it had made under the nuclear deal. And in December, the U.S. blamed an Iranian-backed militia for a rocket attack which killed an American contractor in Iraq. The U.S. retaliated by bombing bases associated with the militia in Iraq and Syria. However, these bombings sparked a backlash in Iraq as the U.S. embassy in Baghdad was attacked by crowds of protesters. President Trump blamed Iran for orchestrating the attack and subsequently targeted Qasem Soleimani, while Iran retaliated by attacking the U.S. base in Iraq. President Trump, in response to the attack, has said that no American was harmed and there were no casualties. He also maintained that the U.S. is prepared to impose more economic sanctions on Iran. As tensions continue to rise in the Middle East, experts have warned that any sustained clashes could have global economic repercussions, particularly on oil prices. Already, oil prices has hit a session high of $70.74 per barrel, its highest since September. Now, with tensions building in the Middle East, is an all-out war on the horizon? Also, are there possibilities of a de-escalation of the conflict and peaceful resolutions? These and more guests will be provided answers to in the course of the program.
Let's now bring in our guests as we take a look at the face-off between the U.S. and Iran. And joining us to speak to the issues is former Nigerian ambassador to Venezuela, Ambassador Rabiu Dagari. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
And also with us this morning is the former Nigerian ambassador to Russia, Dr. Clement Onoja Aduku. We thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you very much.
Also joining us in the studio is Dr. Adoye Matthew Omale. He is a lecturer in the Department of International Relations and Diplomacy, Bayes University. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Good morning, Nigeria. We also have joining us in the studio Barrister Nasara Kogo Umar. He is an international analyst, diplomacy and world relations. You're welcome. It's a pleasure to have you as always.
You're welcome.
Yeah, gentlemen, you're welcome. And today we are going to be delving into an international issue. Last week, the U.S. president directed the assassination of Iranian General Soleimani. And of course, the world reacted to that. And especially Iran, who was directly hit by that. And the country responded by firing over 12 missiles into U.S. bases in Iraq. Just yesterday, we just heard that 2 smaller rockets were launched into the green zone where U.S. embassy and other embassies of the foreign nationals were located. Now, let's look at the imbroglio. Let's look at what actually happened and the consequences. I'd like to bring in, start with Menasa Kugo Omar.
Yes. Well, we have witnessed what happened, and more is likely to unfold in the coming days. But we have to look at it in the context of balance of power. This is a case of balance of power. The issue of United States and Iran is a matter that has been there since 1975. They kept shifting the goalpost. It is climaxing about what we are seeing, in the past 2 days. In international relations, when you are talking about balance of power, there are 5 determinant matters. Number 1 is the issue of economy. Number 2 is the issue of security or military armament. Number 3 is the issue of ideological alignment. Number 4 is the question of population. And number 5 is the question of political balancing. In other words, what type of political lineage are you to within the world setting? If you take these type of issues into context and you analyze them vis-a-vis what is going on right now, both in the United States and in Iran. If you take the United States, for example, Donald Trump is facing a lot of upheavals internally. Today, there are 2 major issues that are going to take place in the United States. The first one is that the United States House of Representatives is going to vote to decide whether to even allow him to go into the war or not. Because in the first place, he didn't even get the United States consent to have even started this trouble. Secondly, at the UN headquarters, there is a summit going on now to review the UN Charter, whether or not it is legitimate to have only 5 members vis United States itself, Britain, France, China, and Russia, whether it is legitimate to have only 5 countries dominating over 300 sovereign countries, whether it is legitimate to have only 5 countries at the UN having over 80% of the military strength of the world, whether it is legitimate to have only 5 countries having over control of over 80% of the world economy, whether it is legitimate for this any one out of the 5 to determine the peace or in otherwise of the world setting by having veto power. So based on these 2 happenings and based on the external aspect of the United States happening today, if you look at it from 1945 to date, there has never been a time when the United States is losing grip in foreign relations. This is a time when the United States is facing problems with China. There is already an existence of economic war going on. This is a time when there is a combination of both ideological or missiles built up. in between Soviet Union and Russia, United States. This is the time when United States as well is facing very serious headache from emerging powers. If you take the case of United States feud with North Korea, for example, Iran itself and so many other countries, it's a Herculean challenge facing United States, coupled with the mother of them all, the impeachment of President Donald Trump, because even if it is stopped at this level, it will go down into history that he has been impeached by the House of Representatives, even if he didn't succeed at the level of the Senate. And going by the election also that is coming up this year, it is essential for him to now decide to create diversionary tactics so that he will be able to win international sympathy, so that he will be able to win international solidarity within his home base. If you take Iran as well, Iran too is having a lot of problems. The question is, if United States should go into war with Iran now, the Iranian government is also facing a lot of threats now. Internationally, they are being condemned over the issue of Shiites, over the issue of their linkages with terrorism, over the issue of their linkages with international fundamentalism. But nevertheless, when America is facing these problems, Iran is likely to have the sympathy of Yemen, to have the sympathy of Syria, to have the sympathy of Lebanon, to have the sympathy of North Korea, to have the sympathy of China, to have the sympathy of Russia. So America is afraid of the possibility of the solidarity Iran will get in the event of war. The same thing also, Iran is afraid of going into war with the United States because in international relations, there is no permanent enemy. It is a question of permanent interest. How sure are they, all these world forces, when the real war starts, will not abandon Iran and then turn back to be supporting the United States? So it's a case of diversionary tactics. They are using Qasem Soleimani as a sacrificial lamb. Because recently, if you observe what is going on in Iran, there is growing tension of protests and demonstrations against the government. So they now decided to use somebody who is charismatic, who is popular, so that to win confidence and win further grip over the citizenry in Iran by doing this. And that is the reason why there is a fundamental point I want to make. That is the reason why they deliberately didn't hit the United States target very well. Because the United States has stationed over 5,000 military forces in Iraq. Why even the United States, when it is attacking Qasem Soleimani, why did they attack him in the Iraqi capital at the airport? Why didn't they attack him in Iran? So this is a case of international conspiracy in the dictum of balance of power. What remains now is for us to see whether there will be a possibility of moving to the next level where we will see really the need for them to really act so as to diffuse the tension. Otherwise, it will continue to be a case of cast and mouth.
Okay, thank you so much, Barrister Nasara. We will now come to Ambassador Rabiu Degri. You know, it's like a game of wits between America and Iran right now, and everybody is cautious. Both governments are cautious, and Barrister Nasara is saying it's a balance of power. So how do you see it playing out in the next few days?
Thank you very much. It is an interesting development. Prior to what happened yesterday, we thought things were going to really get heated up, but there was always the acceptance that Iran could not take on America frontally, and it was assumed that maybe they would use their proxies. But Iran said this is a damage done to them and they would do it on their own. But mercifully, their reaction, which was considered proportionate and moderate, had somehow dissipated the tension for now. But then the most interesting thing to look at is that Trump, when he came on to address the American nation yesterday, said under his watch, he is not going to allow Iran to have nuclear weapons. And Iran, because of what has happened, has already started enriching uranium, working on their centrifuges. So there is going to be another crisis. You know, how Trump is going to stop it is what we don't know. And then they are now accelerating, you know, to go and actually get to the threshold. And that is what is happening now. So it is going to be a very serious situation. Are we going to shift into cyber warfare? Remember, 2010, one of the facilities of Iran was attacked through the cyber thing, and then it was crippled. It was a warm attack. So Iran has also now developed their own cyber warfare. So we don't know whether it is going to go back to that, because it is going to be a very serious issue cyber warfare can cripple modern economies, can cripple modern societies, can stop power supply, can stop anything, So Iran too is also basing all its its project on cyber, and it could be attacked. So we don't know whether it is going to shift from the physical world, to the cyberspace. So that is one area. But then the most fundamental thing is that these two arrivals, right from 1953, when the Iranian Prime Minister Mossadegh was assassinated through Western intelligence agencies, because he threatened to nationalize the oil industry in Iran. And then, of course, the revolution of 1979 came and American hostages were taken. So America has been interested in that country for a very long time. It has caused so many problems for so many American presidents, including Jimmy Carter, who lost election because of the hostage crisis, and then Reagan came in. So it has been a long-running battle between America and Iran, and it has been a consequential event in any U.S. election. And remember, we are in the election year now in the United States, and definitely some wouldn't want to look like a very soft person when it comes to dealing with international crisis like this. He will soon be facing a presidential debate, and he wants to show the American people that he can stand up to any aggression or any threat to American interests in the outside world. Remember when Clinton, the lady, that is Hillary Clinton, was going for the presidency, she said, who would you trust to receive the call at 3 a.m. in the morning about what was going on in the world, Yes. Is it me or is it, so it has been there. So America now, with the election coming, somebody has to do something really bold. Yeah. And I think that is what is now pushing the crisis again. So will America now leave as the Iraqi parliament has demanded? It was a non-binding resolution. It doesn't mean America is going to pack and go. And then what is going to happen if America were to leave? What is going to happen to ISIS? They have been dislodged, but they are regrouping. Mm-hmm. The coalition that actually brought them down has more or less disbanded. So what is going to happen? So these are some of the things that we have to look at. Is America going to sit ground in such a very delicate and interesting region of the world, with a big percentage of the oil supply to the world? So that is the interesting situation we are going to be seeing in the next couple of days, weeks, and even years.
Yeah, it's indeed a complex situation. Sure. And of course, Nasser has situated the entire thing, talking about balance of power, economic war, and what have you. And the U.S. president noted that there were reasons, for America to hunt down on Soleimani. He gave certain reasons. One, he said that he was responsible for the killing of an American contractor based in Iraq, and that he has successfully used proxy forces that Iran maintains in that region to also carry out some terrorist attacks and what have you. That he has been being hunted over the years, that it was a high time they stopped him, and that his presence in Iraq was also a visit to strategize on other attacks that he intended to carry out, and which of course he said will affect Americans. Now let's bring in O'Malley here. Let's bring in Dr. Clement Onoja Aduku here, who is a former ambassador to Russia. What do you make of the entire situation? Reasons given by the U.S. president for what he did, and of course what followed thereafter.
Thank you very much. As my other discussants have observed a while ago, the issue between the United States of America and the Republic of Iran has been outstanding for a very long time. What is playing out now is just a simple escalation of hostilities that had been there between the two countries we're discussing. But then what is most important to discuss at this stage is the impact of this last attack on American interests, and the fact that the killing of Qasem Soleimani the Major General who has been so respected and so revered in Iraq, has produced a new paradigm shift into this configuration and into this confusion. What do I mean by this? The essence of the situation Iran and the United States find themselves today is because, like he rightly observed, this ideological divide has always been there. But then how is it going to be managed? Who takes the lead? Who poses as the strong man in this melodrama that is playing out? In my very simple interpretation of the unfolding of these events is that America, like my colleague Rabi Dagari has said, does not want to look very weak before Iran. They had always observed and consistently maintained that position that Iraq proves a very destabilizing stance or position within the Middle East as a whole. It is not just now what is happening between the United States of America on one side and Iran on the other. No, I'm looking at it from a larger and wider perspective. From the prism of what has happened, you can see that America has always tried as much as it can to have a very dominant influence in the Middle East, just as they have in other parts of the world, including, of course, even in the continent of Africa where we belong. But then, they do not want this rivalry between Iran and the United States of America. They want to put Iran in the position that they can always get what they want from the Middle East. Don't forget that America spent so much money, lost a lot of personnel during the Iraqi war that unfolded sometime in 2003, and it is still ongoing. It has not come to an end. So what is happening now is an escalation of these hostilities that have been embedded into the psyche of these two, rivalries. Everybody knows that America has, of course, the overwhelming military force to, sink Iran if they want. But then they are also cautious of the fact that any war with Iran is not just one-on-one war between two countries. They are talk of what the interests of the North Koreans are, talk of Russia especially, talk of even Turkey, and all these other countries that I imagine as very formidable forces within the global scene. So I think the best thing to do is to look at how this crisis can be, contained. That is why if you listen very carefully recently in most of these international news outlets, you find out that Russia has not made any categorical statement to decide the position they belong to. Mm-hmm. The same thing China. The same thing the young man over there in North Korea. They are watching to see the way the events unfold. And that silence is very worrisome. Because nobody knows.
Silent of the ship.
The silence of the ship, because you do not know the why support America because of its overwhelming force in the continent.
From the statement of Trump yesterday, yes, he said that Iraq seems to be standing down, and that he's prepared. Iran is standing down based on their reaction. But people don't understand what he meant by that. You have just been attacked, and you are saying that all is well with that. So that's another thing that needs to be analyzed to understand where he was coming from. And he made it emphatically clear that he is going to remain a president and allow Iran to have a nuclear
He actually
power.
said, as long as I'm president of the United States of America, I would never allow Iran to have nuclear power.
And how he was going to achieve it, nobody knows. That's what Ambassador told us a short while ago.
Yes. I'm looking at it from the point of view that these people are just playing some serious international political game. Mm-hmm. Why is it that the strike on the American interest did not even have one casualty?
But in the Iranian broadcast media, they are saying 80 Americans died, 200 were wounded. That is the broadcast going on in Iran now, because I don't think they have access to other media. So that is their belief, and they're sort of celebrating that 80 Americans have been killed, 200. Coming to you, Omale, Ambassador Rabiu talked about cyber war. Yeah. Most experts are saying this war will not be fought on the ground. It's going to be up there, maybe nuclear, whatever. And how do you think the cyber war could cripple and destabilize the existence of humanity?
Yeah, the cyber war, just like Ambassador has said, is a very, very crucial war where a lot of internet activities will take place. A lot of even stock exchanges will be hacked. A lot of issues using the internet. But by and large, I know that both countries are trying to de-escalate this crisis. One clear signal that I think that's what Trump meant by standing down. I think both countries at this point in time of our contemporary international relations and diplomacy are not interested in an all-out war. We might have limited, isolated strikes as it has happened. But I just wanted to say something briefly about what Barrister has said. Yes. You see, in the international, there's no question about who started the fight. I think both parties, just like the ambassadors have mentioned, the crisis have been there from the 50s down to the hostage crisis of 1979. So the question of who started this particular crisis is not cannot just be arrived at because it's a long-term issue. Just like the presenter has said, if you have to look at how this particular crisis began, look at this, the attack on the U.S. Embassy, the protest about 2 weeks ago, which culminated in the American striking General Soleimani. You will discover that it was a well-organized protest, which led to the storming of the American embassy. And of course, every country will want to protect her own sovereignty and her own interest. And one striking thing I want all of us to look at is that both Iran and America have violated Iraqi sovereignty, because this war is in another country. It's not even in both countries. Both of them are in Iraq, violating Iraq's territorial integrity. Even the strike on U.S. bases within Iraq. Yeah. The strike by the killing of Soleimani is within Iraq. So what is happening? Why are they not striking themselves? Why is Iraq at the middle?
And when I was watching, I was monitoring CNN yesterday, Iraqis are even saying they want American troops out of Iraq.
Well, that is what their parliament.
Their parliament have voted on that.
Yes,
but
they
you
voted
see,
on that.
I read the release by the courts. The courts are saying no, that it is these Americans that have made us to even exist. We would have been wiped out. Exactly. So ISIS, the Americans have played a significant role in stabilizing Iraq. Don't forget that after the Gulf War, Iraq was vulnerable. And the coming of the Americans has restored some level of stability in Iraq. Now, I don't think they are really serious about Americans pulling out. That is my view.
Okay, let's bring in Minister once more. Yes. And we stay in Iraq, which is now the battleground. Yes. And the Prime Minister of Iraq did say yesterday that the two countries should exercise restraint. Yes. So invariably meaning that he doesn't want to do away with Americans, neither is he in a hurry to do away with Iran. Right. Because Soleimani also played a role during the fight against ISIS. Yes. Even when we know that the claim that he did it single-handedly had been doubted, by many who said, look, that the cults led that war, supported by Americans' firepower. Now, the position of Iraq in all of this is what I want you to talk about. Because in Iraq, there are proxy forces, the so-called Iranian proxy forces, who were being commanded or directed by Soleimani. There are also militant groups, militias, the Hezbollah, which is one of the reasons why America had to, strike Soleimani. His activities in that area, right? And his visit to Iraq on the day of his assassination was tied to a plan to, strike American bases. So, what will be the position of Iraq as it is now as a government? What do you expect from the Iraqi government?
Yes. Well, before talking about Iraq, let me comment on His Excellency's issue of the cyber war. Already the stage is set for that. Iranian hackers have already hacked the U.S. portal, www.union.co.uk.reports. They have already hacked it. So they are already going into the next stage, which is the cyber system. That one is, by the way. Coming to the position of Iraq, is conspiratorial as far as I'm concerned. There is no justification, whether in international law, in international relations and diplomacy, there is no justification whatsoever when you go into another foreign land and commit aggression. For long, if you take the case of Iran and United States, take it back to September last year. September last year at the UN summit, the Iranian foreign minister, Mohammad Zarif, was prevented from going to visit his own ambassador who was ailing in the hospital there. He was restricted by the United States forces only within the embassy and the UN building. And then today's program that is going on at the UN too, they denied him visa. Even the UN Secretary General spoke against it and said that there is no reason whatsoever why you should deny a diplomat. And December, the UN General Assembly decided and passed a resolution that the United States should withdraw all sanctions against the Iranian diplomats. So it's in flagrant violation of this, not only the assassination of Qasem Soleimani, but going into another country that is different. I am not surprised regarding the comment from the Iraqi, because they are just puppets of American interest. After the assassination of Saddam Hussein, the report that came about was that all that the United States was saying was a false. There was nothing like nuclear armaments built up. There was nothing like that. And no sanction followed it. Correspondingly, there should be stiff sanction. Especially now that the United States, like I said, is losing grip. The 5 permanent superpowers of the world are all having domestic problems, and they cannot afford to leave their domestic problems to go and support America. Russia, for example, is facing problems of popularity upheavals, various demonstrations and crises. If you take China, even if you leave China with the problem of Hong Kong, that is enough for it. Yeah. If you take France, the issue of the yellow jerseys or yellow vest, or what you call it, and the uprising against for terrorism in France. If you take Britain, for example, the Brexit and other problems they are facing are enough. So America will definitely find it very difficult to have any possible ally. And there is this growing cynicism against the United States interest, which America is now afraid. So what they are only using is that whatever direction United States moves, it is natural for the Iraqi government to support that direction, either by keeping silent or by making positive pronouncements. So
Minister, President Trump called on the EU and NATO to take up more responsibilities in that region.
Yes.
Right. And again, Iran had made it clear that it's going back to its original plan to acquire nuclear.
Yes.
Now, such statement by Iran, would it actually affect the decision of other allies, who have been supportive of the 2015 agreement on nuclear, which of course America has pulled out from.
Diplomatically speaking, that statement from the United States is an empty statement.
No, from Iran, that they're going to continue with their...
Exactly, that is what I'm saying. The warning from the United States is an empty statement. It should be a statement that should come from the United Nations Security Council. The U.S., nobody arrogates to the U.S. the power of being the world policeman for them to determine the question of peace or war. They are building their own armaments. And then they are saying you shouldn't build your own armaments. Whether you like it or not, you must acknowledge the fact the build-up of armaments in Iran, the build-up of armaments in North Korea, the build-up of armaments in Turkey, the build-up of armaments in several other countries. They are forces to be reckoned with in international diplomacy now, whether you like it or not. You can't clear that away. Because of what? Because the United States itself and its other allied forces, nobody is restricting the extent to which they are building their own armament. So they don't have any moral ground upon which what they are doing, they will now ask somebody to say, stop it.
Okay, now thank you so much for your contribution. We now come to Ambassador Rabiu Doguri. You've been Venezuela ambassador, and you've been and you've been privy to how America encroaches on the sovereignty of any nation, just like during Chavez's period. And America, talking about sanctions now here, is saying after all the sanctions that is on Iran, is saying they are going to bring in quotes more powerful sanctions. How is that going to affect the Iranian economy?
Well, there is already progressive sanctions, America is imposing. They call it maximum pressure. That is trying now, it has gone beyond just denying Iran anything that would make conditions of living fine for the Iranian people. Now they are targeting the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. They have put sanction on him and his aides, on the foreign minister, Mohammad Javad Zarif, He is also targeted by U.S. So U.S. sanction has been there. But interestingly, it is behind these sanctions that have been imposed against Iran that they've been able to develop even the missiles that were fired yesterday. So it is interesting, even though President Trump was saying that it was because Obama had released some money to Iran, that was why they were able to get that type of money to go on to the project that enabled them now to have this missile that they used yesterday. So it is also recognized that, yes, Iran now has missiles despite all the sanctions and is able to reach targets, that it wanted to reach. They hit 2 targets, one base in called Assad, and then the other one, I cannot remember the name, So it has shown the capability of Iran despite the sanction, But the interesting thing that we all tend to overlook is that this crisis, as bad as it looks for Iran, is actually some kind of savior to the country, because prior to that, there were protests in over 100 cities of Iran. A lot of people were killed because there was increase in the price of fuel, of oil. I mean, for OPEC countries that have huge subsidies on oil, that is always a political issue. And remember, that crisis would have actually spilled over into so many things. I mean, the regime change that America wanted to, maybe only God knows what could have resulted in that, but it was really getting out of control. And they had to release out their security forces to quell it. It is all over the news, It was really getting out of hand. And even in Iraq itself, this crisis had now galvanized the country and the people against, behind their government and behind what Iran stands for, that is foreign intervention in the area. So Iran and Iraq were having serious problems politically, because even as we are talking, there is now consideration to reform the electoral process in Iraq, so that people, the protesters on the street, about 300 or so were killed, since it started in, I think, on the 1st of October. That protest has been raging, and there's challenge to the system. They want the complete political system to be changed, and the president has authorized that should be done. There should be electoral reform. So this crisis now has somehow given the politicians in both Iran and Iraq, some breathers, as much as it is ironical that a crisis of this magnitude could give you some leeway or latitude. That is exactly what has happened. And what makes it even more interesting is that it is an election year in the United States. Yes. And things like that are going to get even more exciting to the politicians, the Republicans and the Democrats. So Trump has announced new sanctions, to be imposed on Iran, despite the fact that he has noted with satisfaction that Iran is stepping down, from what they expected was going to be a much serious response to what was seen.
Yes, talking about Republicans and Democrats, last night I saw Senator Dan Paul and Senator Mike, strong Republicans, reeling against the speech that Trump gave yesterday. And it's like, do you see a little break in the Republican Party? Well, in this escalating tension that we have now?
Foreign policy in America has always been a contentious issue, even within the same parties. Okay. Yes, so the statement made by Trump, for example, Senator, one of the former senators, Graham, is it Graham? Or I can't remember.
Just go ahead.
Yeah, he said is one of the best speeches made by a U.S. president in a very long time. But then there are condemnation even from among the Republicans.
That is the worst speech.
And then they took him on because he was speaking on Obama. Obama did this, Obama did that. So it was not really taken in by most of the politicians, even those that are on the Trump side. But that is local American politics. You know, I know it impinges on what happens globally too, you know, because you want to be sure who is going to be the United States of America and whether he's going to protect or promote the interests of America vis-a-vis what you stand for is important. You know, we pay attention to that.
Okay, now let's turn to Dr. Clement Onoja Aduke. Let's look at Iran as a nation and its interests globally. Iran is known for sponsoring Hezbollah in Lebanon. Iran is also playing a role in the Yemeni war, which is supporting the Houthis, both with war, ammunition and armament, and even personnel. And then in Iraq as well, as you rightly pointed out, that America is not in Iraq just based on the fact that it has interest in Iraq. But Iraq also has interest in having America with them because they are volatile. And of course, they cannot forget the experience they had during the ISIS saga. And they don't want that to come back again. And Ahmed Soleimani operated in these areas physically. Right, and what I'm looking at, you know, America says, look, that the country has expanded its tentacles across the globe and funding some groups that have been designated as terrorist groups. This is across the globe, and that Soleimani masterminded, or you know, all of that. And I'm even wondering if the man that took over from him can sustain the temple.
Yeah, it is just before I respond directly to the comment you have made, I want also to revisit the issue of the domineering power of America within the global sphere. You know, even though there could be some little divisions within the party, which is expected, you know, the opposition and the party in power and so on and so forth, the Americans come strongly united when there is a force or forces against them. Don't mind that Republicans are saying one thing and then the Democrats are saying the other. Should there be an outbreak of hostilities, that is an outbreak of war, you find that the Americans come united and speak with one voice. Yes. That is one aspect. Then coming to the role Iran is playing within the Middle East as a whole. Well, it is not for me to decide whether the role they play there is to destabilize the region or to have some kind of hegemonic influence within that area. What Iran wants to do is to also say, yes, we can also stand on our feet. We don't mind the United States of America pulling us or pushing us back and forth. We can also become a force to be reckoned with within the international political scene. But then Iran has to tread with some caution, because if there is outbreak of hostilities, it is then the world powers and major European powers, NATO and all these other strong forces within the global scene start taking sides. And if they do, Iran is not likely, by my own simple and modest calculation, to get more allies against the United States of America than America will get against Iran. Because the United States of America's presence in Iraq is just to be able to contain some of the excesses of Iran within the Middle East as a whole, within that region. And what do I mean by that? It is that if the United States of America pulls out completely, as they had, I know they will not even pull out totally, because it is not just enough to spend so much money there and mortgage their interest on oil and mortgage their interest in trying to establish what they call global peace and security within that area. The presence of America and the over 5,200 forces on ground there as at now is to a greater advantage of Iraq, and which Iran does not want, because Iran wants to at any time have this overwhelming influence, in Iraq, and then of course start funding these various militia groups, the Shia militia groups here and there. They are all over the place in Lebanon, in Syria, and it is spread all over the place. So America's presence in Iraq will, to a very large extent, help stabilize the government of Iran. So it helps stabilize the government of Iraq. Why? Because, like some other discussants have said, the existence of Iraq today on the globe is thanks to the American intervention when it did, after Saddam Hussein was gotten rid of and so on and so forth. So in summary form, Iran has to look at a way to be able to find a way to establish and consolidate this hegemonic interest they are looking for, not at the detriment of offending America to that extent. Like I said, and I'll continue to repeat, that I don't believe that the attack on the green zone, and all the, conflagration of all the embassies and all other, Western powers represented there was done in error. if they had wanted to hit even the American embassy, these are guided missiles. It does not require any rocket science to know that if it is targeted against A or B, it will get to target. So I'm still thinking that both sides want to de-escalate the crisis, but they wouldn't come out to say. It's like when you are fighting, cat and mouse game. If you are at war with somebody who want to say, I will do you this, I will do you that, and now want to talk stuff. I listened very carefully when I was chief of protocol, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Iranian foreign minister, Zarif, was here. And I noticed that the position Iraq holds is just to say, the Iran holds is to say, don't brush us out from the theater of events on the global scale. We are also relevant. After all, you have nuclear capabilities. We also have. Russia has. Every other country has. So why don't we allow us, like you were saying? But then, if everybody is allowed to do whatever we want, where do we play global peace and security?
Sorry, I'd like him to come in here because why I raise the issue of Iran is also that this expansionism, theory, which many countries are trying to practice. You call it a balance of power, right? Iran is also having issues with Saudi Arabia, right? And the support they are giving to the Houthi rebel has led to Houthi rebel being able to, strike at Saudi Arabia's oil refinery. So where do you come in here? What's the power play?
Yes. Don't forget that Iran is a strong power within the Middle East. And when we are talking about alliances, we all know that America has a standing alliance. Even with NATO, UK, France, those ones are standing. Now, Barrister was mentioning Yemen and some countries as allies of Iran. Those ones cannot really withstand any serious battle. So, the struggle for the Middle East, as far as power is concerned, Iran is playing a very, very important role in terms of maintaining power in the Middle East. And the United States is trying to water that power. Now, the possession of nuclear arsenal by Iran is a threat to the entire Middle East. So, that America is telling Iran not to develop nuclear arsenal, I believe most of the countries around Iran will follow America to support the destruction of Iran nuclear arsenal. Because Iran possessing that weapon is a threat to Saudi Arabia, no doubt about that. It's a threat to the United Arab Emirates. It's a threat to all the other countries, even Iraq itself.
And Israel.
And even Israel. So I think that in terms of alliance, Iran will not be able to muster enough. Even the Chinese and the Russians, you cannot be too sure. Because by the time, just like Ambassador mentioned, full war breaks out. And you will be shocked with the level of support the United States is going to have. It's not about Trump, Republican Party, and Democratic Party. It's now about the interest of a lot of countries. And in international relations, what matters is national interest. Yes. The interest of the various, even the countries in the Middle East. Now, Turkey wants to be the powerhouse of the Middle East. And Turkey is being, Erdogan is trying to project Turkey as the major power base in the Middle East, which Iran is also struggling with Turkey. So you discover that in terms of balance of power within the Middle East, America has been able to penetrate because most of the neighbors of Iran are they are in tune with America's demand of demilitarizing Iran. Because as long if Iran acquires this nuclear arsenal, honestly speaking, it will use it to destabilize a lot of places in the world. Yes. And that is where, if we look at it, don't throw away the baby and the bathwater. Yes, it's possible that, yes, Iran is amassing this stockpiling this nuclear weapon for destructive activity. Of course, you know the relationship between the ruling family in Saudi Arabia and the Iranian government. If it were not because of the American bases in Saudi Arabia and in Iraq and several other countries within the Middle East, you will be surprised that Iran would have even done the same thing Iraq did by annexing Kuwait. Yes, by annexing Kuwait. So if Americans have not stood up to Saddam Hussein during the Gulf War, Kuwait would have been history. And so those are the activities that, it's not as if we are not condemning the way America is going about trying to enforce stability within the Middle East. We are all against, and like Trump said yesterday, if you listen to him, he said we are now self-sufficient in producing oil. We don't need anybody's oil. But honestly, that speech, as far as Ambassador was saying, I think it's one of the best speech that have really de-escalated this crisis.
You know, and talking about the speech, yes, if you're coming, yes.
Point, about the Iran nuclear program.
Yes.
Well, it's good for some countries to have the nuclear weapon, But I think what has spurred them into going for that, it is because their arch enemy in the region, Israel, already possesses nuclear weapons.
Yes.
And the only deterrence you could have from anybody holding nuclear weapons is to have your own. There was a joke I read somewhere that why are you attacking Iran? Why are you see, Iran doesn't have nuclear. Why don't you attack
North Korea?
North Korea?
No,
because they have nuclear already, and that is why North Korea is going to be extremely reluctant, to relinquish their nuclear program, because they have their own defenses behind that program and that project. That is why no country has attacked them, because they have that capability. So Iran, seeing Israel in that region as their arch enemy, is known to have possessed. They have not come out to say yes, we have it, but it is known all over that Israel do have the weapon, Yes. And Iran feels, why should one country in the region have it and then we are denied, So just to add to why there is this so much interest and so much diversion of resources by Iran to have that nuclear weapon. It's not just for having it for the sake of just having it, because to counter whatever Israel might want to throw in the region.
And what is worrisome to America, if you ask me, is the fact that Iran has the technology, the knowledge of the technology, That is exactly what matters, and that is why you won't take them for granted. Yes. They have the knowledge. They've acquired it. They're training more personnel in the area, so that even if a generation declares, the upcoming generation has the knowledge again, the capacity, to put that in place. Because of course the materials are there, for them to use. Just put one and one together, to get a result.
Yes, that's why coming to my question now. Kiran asked it earlier. Taking Qasem Soleimani out of the equation, yes. Did it in any way stop the plan the Iranians are having for nuclear weapons?
The Americans are very smart when it comes to international politics. You see, the killing of Qasem Soleimani has taken the Iranian... Why the Iranians are taking this killing, they are very angry with this killing, is simply because Qasem Soleimani has been in the forefront of organizing the Iranian military arsenal, yes. Military establishment. And with his killing now, he's going to set them back by almost 10 to 15 years.
Are you sure the hierarchy is not there for somebody to take up immediately? Because
you can take up, but before you settle down, before you begin to understand the nitty-gritty. So what the Americans have done simply was, look, destabilize their military establishment. And with the taking out of Qasem Soleimani, it has set the Iranian military establishment back by almost 10 years. Before a new person has been appointed. But before that man will settle down, understand some of the underlying issues that are involved, and also having the network to penetrate the way Qasem Soleimani has been going from Iraq to Turkey to Lebanon.
But did he walk alone?
Yes.
He must have had a team.
Of course, you know that when you are dealing with a country like America, in international relations, in international politics, there's a lot of discrete activities. Yeah. Of course, Ambassador knows what I'm talking about. There are a lot of underground strategic operations and strategic engagements, which is not open to the entire establishment. Qasem Soleimani is in the thick of it, and the Americans know. So taking him out has set back the entire
process.
Iranian military.
Yeah, I think what I'm saying is also because of the fact that all those proxy organizations were being,
funded
supported,
yes,
and of course directed by Soleimani,
yes,
right, including the ones in Lebanon, that's the Hezbollahs, and the Houthi rebels in Yemen. He was also doing the coordination of Iranian activities in those areas. So, like correctly said, it certainly set Iran back some years, but of course they will recover very soon.
Look at with the killing of Osama bin Laden, Al-Qaeda has virtually gone into, and even the recent ISIS killing. So what the Americans have done is to target specific individuals that will put a spanner in the works of most of these terrorist organizations and terrorist groups.
Okay, in the speech, Trump said the attack was not to start a war. It's to prevent it. Yes. And the Iranian government are saying it is a big retreat for Trump. What do you say, Dr.
Well, it is a case of stabbing you with a knife and say it is not intended for blood to come out, but to fortify your health. Yes. I don't think that statement is really a realistic statement. Okay. You understand? Killing of Qasem Soleimani, as far as I'm concerned, would not in any way change the political and military stand of Iran. You can kill an individual, but you cannot kill an institution and you cannot kill an ideology. They have the institution, they have the ideology, and they are investing heavily in the search for contemporary knowledge. Remember history. Iran is a more senior brother than America in history. Yeah. Iran has existed as a superpower long before America was even discovered.
For millennia.
For millennia, long before America was even discovered. And they have been maintaining that level, whether at the level of the third world or at the level of lower world or at the level of the higher world. They have been maintaining that they are a significant figure to be reckoned with. And it is essential in international diplomacy to develop mechanism for deterrent. A mechanism for deterrent here means you have to learn from history. America went into international aggression against the sovereignty of Iraq, against the sovereignty of Afghanistan, against the sovereignty of Libya, against the sovereignty of many other countries. Now, Iran, going by what has been going on since 1975, it is the greatest foolishness for Iran not to develop nuclear armaments for protective and defense purposes. And it is the enrichment of this nuclear development that has thwarted the ability of America to have crushed Iran long ago. And it is this thing that is giving the Iranian government the possibility to entrench allies globally, to entrench interests globally. If you take, for example, what America is doing, even though I don't even blame the United States so much, I blame the United Nations General Assembly, especially the Security Council. I blame the Security Council. It should be the one responsible for maintenance of world peace and order. But America is taking laws into its own hand. Look at, for example, the recent assassination of Soleimani. In a foreign country, in a neutral country, somebody that was not there on a military mission. He was there with a small convoy at the airport.
How do you know his mission?
You know, Benny.
No, they said it. They said it. Listen, if he was there, listen.
Dr. Menasala,
yes.
You know, Benny Sanders said he hopes the Congress does everything to remind the president about the Constitution of the United States.
Yes.
Sometimes we forget it, he said. He said further that it is the Congress that determines whether the country goes to war or not the president of the United States.
Which is the determination they are going to take today. That is what I said. It is in flagrant violation of American law. He first of all even assassinated. He should have first of all gotten the consent.
Sanders may not
on the basis of legality.
But that
is what the law says.
Excuse me.
That is what the law says. The American Constitution says it.
Sanders may be correct.
Yes.
But she has to understand and appreciate the level of powers bestowed on the American president.
Yes.
When Bush went to Iraqi war, he never consulted the Congress.
Yes.
He said, look, as I'm talking to you, as I've already given directive for the American army to start striking Operation something that he called it. Operation Desert Storm. Yes. You know, at 6 p.m. Iraqi time. So he never
There was a pre-announcement
so,
for that.
So now the powers of American president should be well understood in this circumstance, right? He can direct for any. When Osama bin Laden was killed, did Obama seek the congressional? So let's leave it at that.
We'll take a break right now. When we return, the discussion continues. Don't go away.
You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. We thank you for staying with us up to this moment that the conversation is getting more and more interesting. Now, many Nigerians are also contributing to the conversation by way of tweets. We have a litany of it here with us. So let's begin with this one from Sandy Michael Omakuji. He said Soleimani was a murderer responsible for the deaths of thousands, including hundreds of Americans. But this reckless move escalates the situation with Iran and increases the likelihood of more deaths and new Middle East conflict. Our priority must be to avoid another costly war. That's according to Sani Michael Omakochi.
And coming from Comrade Alhaji Ngala, tensions in the Middle East is a serious issue. World leaders, as a matter of urgency, should try and call Iran and USA to order, because if care is not taken, it will lead to war.
Okay, Abdul says war can never be an option in the settlement of conflicts. The effects are destructions of life and property, as well as diseases and underdevelopment. At the end, dialogue settles whatever conflict that's brewing.
And Chris Paul tweets, peace, peace, peace. That's what the world needs now. Let the US and Iran go back to the round table and solve the problem amicably. The world can't afford another unnecessary conflict that will do more harm than good.
All right, Ibrahim Modu Aji sounds different here. He said, Boko Haram, kidnapping, robbery, and other forms of insecurity confronting Nigeria is enough for us to tackle it. We don't want another civil unrest. Any miscreants using US-Iran conflict, whatever he wrote there, to cause trouble in Nigeria should be dealt with. Police and the army should be on the red alert.
They are already on red alert, you know. And coming from Chukwuemeka Nwosu, the lesson I took from all that has happened is Nigeria as a regional giant doesn't get entangled in the affairs of states so as not to appear overbearing. The overbearing posture is what earned Iran that tag of terrorist supporting states.
Now, Shoaibu Mahmoud Jawad, he said, in my own view, I think the war is unnecessary as the world has more important things to take care of, such as global warming and how to go about it. Each of these countries involved in this act and quest are just doing so for personal reasons and trying to show supremacy.
Show of power, actually. And Bashir tweets, a major reason for General Suleiman's killing is to deter Iran from establishing the Shia Crescent, a corridor from Iran, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon up to the sea, which he's spearheading with the help of allied militias, and US, Israel, and Saudi cannot afford this to happen.
Okay, now, Delejak Solomon, it says, as a country, we must continue to stand against any form of terrorism, local or foreign. Also, we condemn killing of persons and rocket attacks on bases housing troops, which might escalate a spiral of violence in the area. The use of weapons must stop now to give peace and dialogue a chance.
And Idogisi William tweets, when it comes to the death of General Suleiman, there is no one to blame but himself. He effectively signed his own death warrant by planning massive attack against US personnel in Iraq and throughout the Middle East.
Now, Mike, the escalation of tension in the Middle East as a result of Iran-US face-off is very unfortunate. The whole world abhors terrorism. We need peace. We have recently witnessed many ungodly terrorist acts in the region, which include the bombing of Saudi oil installations, ISIS killings of innocent people, etc. No matter the justifications for killing of Iranian general by the USA, the action did not conform with international norms. The two countries should exercise restraint, and the emergency meeting of the UN should be immediately convened to mediate on the matter for peace.
And Titus Monday Knock tweets, wars are not the best way to settle scores. The best alternative to war is to always be in constant and genuine negotiations. No nation in history comes out from war without some inherent losses, either financially or otherwise. Beaten war drums by both nations should be de-escalated.
All right, from Badamasi, Haruna Adamu. It will be the same as the Vietnam and North Korea war versus U.S. Meanwhile, I think Trump wants to change the political sociology from impeachment to war. More so, lack of cooperation of member states in the Arab League has left me with the question of the relevance of functionalism theory. Thank you so much for your tweets and your contributions to this very interesting conversation. Now, we're about to conclude this program, but not without stepping back at some of the issues that we have raised in the course of the discussion. Now, we have seen what has played out. What next in terms of amelioration of the deplorable conditions that have been created by actions and the actions of America and Iran? Right, so where do we now go from here? When Trump has said that it is time for peace, how can this peace be achieved?
Well, thank you very much. That has not been spelled out, and the issues have gotten as deep as they could go between Iran and the United States. It is like they have come very close, but I think for some reasons common sense had prevailed and they have pulled back a little bit from the brink. But that is not to say that issues that could still trigger some crisis are not there. For example, we have seen that Iran perhaps has the capability to strike at Saudi Arabia. We know that that strike on the oil facilities and then the oil fields were really not done by the Houthis do not have that capability to do that, you know. It was believed it is the surrogates of Iran in Iraq that fired those missiles that did the damage, whether it was drone or missiles, you know. And that shows the capability of Iran when it comes, and it takes reinforcement of about 3,000 troops now of America back on Saudi Arabian soil, you know, to deter any future attack from wherever source it came. There's been disagreement as to who actually ordered or got that thing carried out. And then you come to the fact that America has instituted or have gotten a group of countries to start what they call the International Maritime Security Construct, you know, to make sure that navigation in the Gulf and then the Strait of Hormuz is free of any interference by Iran. So that is also another area that maybe could provoke Iran, because there are satellites, there are station carriers, and then there are mobile ships, you know, going to monitor the waters.
Yeah, and that happened because Iran was accused of attacking an oil tanker.
Six oil tankers, but up till now there wasn't any evidence, conclusive evidence to show who actually carried them out. The West believe it was done by Iran. Iran has protested that they were not responsible, so there was that argument again, you know. But then the problem is that Iran is going deeper and deeper. It's been affected by the sanctions. And the hope they were thinking they were going to get something from the EU or from the other members of the P5+1 has not worked out. I remember last year the president of France invited Zarif to come at the size of the G7 meeting that took place in France to see whether he could organize some rapprochement between Iran and the United States. That didn't work out. And previously, the Prime Minister of Japan had also intervened, and he went to meet the Supreme Leader, and they told him that, look, we could not negotiate with America. The present leadership in America is not interested in that, so we have no message for him, you know. So that was how those two efforts ended, unfortunately. So the trips are there, you know, that could spark up more crisis, you know. The Iraqi situation is also delicate, you know. You have the Kurds who also want more autonomy, even independence. And then there is the Shia resurgence, 65% of the population of Iraq is Shia. They've been dominated by the Sunnis before. Saddam Hussein was the last Sunni leader, So they number about 30% in terms of population. So the Shias, So some people have been arguing that why did America went to that war? Because what it did, was now to remove power from the Sunnis and to allow the Shias, to take over.
So
that emboldens
dimensions to the conversation.
Yes. And talking about other dimensions to the conversation, the plane crash in Iran on Wednesday actually added a new dimension to They are refusing to give the black box to Boeing and to the American government. They are saying they're going to do it themselves. Are they hiding anything?
No, I don't think, based on reports, I don't think the Iranians are really hiding anything, because so far there's no link of the air crash with any...
Do they have the capacity to read the black box? That's the point, because some are saying that they don't have that capacity, that they may take it to Russia for proper analysis of the black box.
Yes, I think in the spirit of the recent escalation of hostilities, I'm believing that in the next few days, that position might change, because I strongly recommend reverting to status quo before the killing of General Soleimani. Okay. Everybody has to revert, and America should consider reopening the cancelled nuclear deal with Iran, though Iran has been accused of violating the terms of the deal, and that is why Trump had to suspend it. I think there's still hope that if they go back to that nuclear deal, there's hope that some level of stability will be attained in the zone.
Okay, Menasara, what's your final thought on this?
Briefly, it is time to really calibrate the efficacy of the UN Security Council as the pivotal of world peace and security. It is very important we do it. Allowing superpowers to be the determinants of world peace, especially the arrogation of the position of world superpower on the United States by itself.
We want the Security Council to be expanded.
No, not only the Security Council. The UN components should be democratized. It is impossible for us in the contemporary world to have only 5 countries, the Britain, France, United States, China, and Russia, the only 5 countries that are controlling 80% of the world economy, 80% of the world military armaments. They are the determinants of
and
the
apart from America, those other countries are enjoying that monopoly.
They are enjoying it.
No, what I am saying, I'm not talking about the United States only. Mark me. I'm talking about the entire UN setting. Yes. We need to have a more acceptable world setting that will really be a world setting of equity, a world setting of all inclusiveness, a world setting of democratic type of free participation by all, so that we will know that we are all equal citizens of the same world.
When it comes to when it comes to funding, yes, global matters, global issues, concerns, who brings money?
For example, now. You have the UN offices in Geneva, in New York, in other countries. Let the UN components be decentralized. That is number one. Okay. So that member countries, especially the permanent members, should be able to really bear responsibilities economically and otherwise. Allowing United States to be the sole determinant of the financial budget is the reason why America
Thank you, Dr. Clement Onoja, your final thoughts on this matter.
Well, in my own considered opinion, the two conflicting sides should exercise maximum restraint, which is what China is saying, which is what Russia is saying, and some other regional or continental powers are saying. But then, it takes two to tango. It is not as easy as just pronouncing modalities of ensuring global peace and security. We have all seen how President DJ Trump has tried to, bring closer Kim Jong-un of North Korea. But then you can set up a meeting and discuss modalities. It is not binding that two sides will agree. Yeah. Trump had done his possible best to get the North Korean president to, pipe down and de-escalate all this uranium enrichment and nuclear armament acquisition and so on. But it appears not to be working. So I am also saying that the best possible way out is to just appeal to the political settings in Iran and in the United States of America to come back again to the negotiating table, if it is possible. Because I've seen the GPCOA thing, yes, it is failing. It is not getting the desired result. So they could come together, hold meetings. At the end of it all, the people go back and start doing other things. Nobody ever believed that President Donald Trump would set his feet on North Korean soil, which was a good gesture to get the president over there to see reasons and then mellow down in his nuclear activities and all these other things. So, in summary, I am of the opinion that countries should not just hurriedly take sides with these conflicting countries, the United States on one side and Iran on the other. They should try to find a way to come together and then, preach global peace and security, which is to the general common good of all.
Okay, Dr. Menasara, before we go, one last question.
One last question is world peace, world peace, world peace.
Yes.
Without peace, the world would not be in existence.
Let's get from Omale, your final thoughts on this matter.
Briefly.
Yes, on the issue of the United Nations has a role to play in driving the entire diplomatic process. People have suggested that the UN should be democratized, the Security Council should be enlarged. In short, we Nigerians who have been agitating that we want to represent Africa. Yes. South Africa is not agreeing, but I believe that. So definitely there need to be some reform in the United Nations. I agree with Barrister, there need to be some reform. But that is not to say that certain powers in international relations. Before now we have two powers, and now we have a unipolar power, which is the United States of America.
So let me take you on this issue of UN being expanded or democratized, as Menasara is positing. When it comes to the issue of funding some international concerns, who funds them? Who brings the larger amount of money? Because in any association, you say you have equal right. But when it comes to equal responsibilities, we don't have it. So now, how do you now expect a nation that has that upper hand in terms of, for instance, when we had Ebola, every other nation relied on America.
Yeah.
Every other nation relied on America. It was so open, even WHO. Right. And what happened? They produced something that was used to deal with that. Even though we know that Nigeria, of course, locally here, we did ours. Right. But then also, there are many other things like that we have to rely on America and other big nations to do. So that is why it may be very difficult to totally democratize it, as the minister is.
We are talking about international relations here. Yes, funding is critical, but above all, the political unity. We are talking about taking care of the shades of all the opinions and interests within the international system. If you don't do that, yes, funding is critical, but above all, the buying in of every segment of the entire universe is very important to the stability of the United Nations. We know that the Second World War came about because of the failure of the League of Nations. Why we are proposing this reform is because we would not want the United Nations to end up like the League of Nations. And therefore, every good organization will continue to reinvent itself, will continue to develop itself. So what we are saying is that there should be room to amend certain rules or laws within the United Nations. That is not to say that America, that is the major financier, will still not have a dominant role to play within the United Nations.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor. Ambassador Rabiu, your final thoughts briefly.
Thank you very much. I think what we have to situate at the center of everything is the welfare of human beings. If you look at the Middle East, whether it is Yemen, whether it is Syria, whether it is Iraq, whether it is Iran, it is the ordinary person on the street that bears the brunt of what the leaders do. So in the final analysis is that whatever we are going to do, we have to situate the human being at the center of things. Whether we are going to go to fight or whether we should take the road to peace. The Iranians are having serious problems on the streets. Serious because of the sanctions. It's not only affecting their leaders. Sanctions hardly hurt the leaders. It is the people on the street that are suffering.
Yes, and they
If you go to Yemen, you see children, you know, like, I mean, it's, at this day and age,
malnourished
you see
children.
children. You go to Syria, you see the number of people crossing or leaving Idlib or whatever into Turkey, you know, unceremoniously leaving their families, leaving their, you know. You go to the whole Middle East in crisis. Look at Lebanon. You know, Lebanon now for about 5 months now there is also no peace protests and everything. You know, so there has been so much tension in the world that we need some more peace, especially in the Middle East, and that is a very important region of the world.
So thank you so much. We have to round up here because time actually is not on our side. It has been a very robust discussion. Ambassador Rabiu Dagri, MNI, retired ambassador, former ambassador of Nigeria to Venezuela with concurrent accreditation to Colombia and Ecuador. Thank you so much for coming on the program. Dr. Adoye Matthew Omale, lecturer, Department of International Relations and Diplomacy, Bayes University, Abuja.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Very nice input there. Very interesting discourse there. And Barrister Nasara Kogo Umar, an international analyst on democracy and international policy. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much.
As always.
It's a pleasure.
And Ambassador Clement Onoja Aduku, Palmer's Academy and Continuing Education Center, Abuja. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you
very much. Thank you very
much.
Thank you.
Now, more foreign story coming up next.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin have called for a ceasefire to end the conflict in Libya. The two leaders are seen to back rival sides in a conflict dragging in an increasing number of states. After talks in Istanbul, Turkey, both presidents said the ceasefire should come into force by Sunday.
Now, Nigerian striker Odion Igalo pulled 14 votes at CAF Awards, and the England-born Nigerian forward Amobi has been included in Bolton Wanderers team of the decade shortlist. Now, let's join our sports desk for details.